What's going on? How is everybody doing today? Let's share this to a community. What's up? All right, let's do this. Today we're going to talk about owner financing. This is what your first option should be every single time you come across a free and clear. Alexa, shut the fuck up. There we go. Now we're alone. All right. Every time you come across a free and clear property, even if they are looking for a cash offer, I'm going to advocate that you always go to owner financing as your first option. I'll give you the reasons why you're going to do that and what the benefits are to you and the seller. And then we're going to go break down to how to actually do this. The benefits are actually many, and some of the best ones for you and the seller are going to be if somebody has a free and clear house for $300,000, they have $300,000 worth of equity. If the house appraises for that much and the property sells for $300,000 traditionally, that seller will walk away with a check for roughly $300,000 minus closing costs. The second they deposit that check into their bank account, it becomes a taxable event, and they wind up having to give anywhere from 25% to close to half of it back to the IRS. However, and this is where drawing out your seller's motivation comes into play, if you ask the seller why they're selling, they're going to tell you, well, we want to move, we want to do this, we want to do that. What do you need the money for? Well, we need the money to buy a new house. Or maybe you don't need the money, maybe you're just clearing stuff up. The concept that I'm trying to get across is you sell a $300,000 house for $300,000, you deposit the money in the bank, it becomes a taxable event. If the seller's equity is never transferred into cash or check and deposited, it is not a taxable event. So in the event they take that same $300,000 house and they decide to 100% owner finance it to you for $300,000, their equity has gone from equity to debt without ever being deposited. When you later sell this house or refinance out, the seller, who is now the lender without a taxable event occurring, has the ability to now recover that money at the point of sale or refinance as the return of borrowed money that was lent out in the form of equity and returned in the form of cash. However, don't take my word for it. Read the tax code. It is not a taxable event. You are not taxed on the return of borrowed money. You are, however, taxed on any interest you may generate, recover, receive, whatever you want to call it. So if it was a 3% interest rate or a 10% interest rate, your seller is going to wind up paying taxes on the interest, but not on the actual loan amount. And the reason why this would be beneficial for them is because you can keep 100% of $300,000, keep it out of any retirement plans, put it right into your bank account, spend it, relend it. All right. You have literally, in many cases, doubled their money. You need to learn how to get that point across. I'm going to give you some other advantages as we go through this. When you come across a free and clear house, owner financing, again, is your first, last, and best line of defense. You may want to ask the sellers after what they're doing with the money, have you thought about an income stream? Because There's many ways you can structure this, and we're going to learn it pretty quickly here. In the event somebody were to owner finance you a house, let's say they wanted a 10% interest rate for 1 year, so $300,000, and they want 10% interest. They want payments. 10% of 300,000 is $30,000. They would pay interest on that $30,000. However, if you actually on paper were to overpay for the house more than it's worth, and you don't need an appraiser because the money's already in place in the form of equity, and they transfer the property to you via deed, right? And you increase the purchase price, owner finance to you, from $300,000 to $330,000. You've overpaid by $30,000. You make your payments via check, wire, transfer, whatever, monthly, which would be 30,000 divided by 12. At the end of that year, that 330 is 300, because that's the amortization schedule you have set up, and that's the schedule in which debt is paid down over time. And guess what? There's no taxes on that additional $30,000 because you've changed the situation to where instead of 10% interest, you've just increased the principal. And again, we know there's no taxes on the return of borrowed principal. So you can actually overpay for a house, benefit the seller, and come up with favorable terms for you. It winds up being a win-win-win all across the board. And we're going to get into a little bit more of how to do it, and we're going to include the documents for you with this module as well. Understanding owner financing. Okay, there's 4 basic things that I'm going to need you to know right after I pour myself this cup of coffee. All right. Terms you're going to need to know. Number 1 is going to be principal. Principal is going to be the outstanding debt, the total without any interest, without any payments, without any fees. So $300,000, you're buying a house for $300,000. That's what it's worth. That's what you agreed to. $300,000 is the principal. Interest rate. Now, if your seller can't wrap their thick skull around why you would give them more and pay them back principal so they did not have taxable income, you're going to have to discuss interest rate. Okay, if we're talking about something like hard money terms, you're probably looking at a higher interest rate of like 10, 12%. Terms is something we're going to go into in detail, and this is going to be the life of the loan. Is it 1 year, 2 years, 30 years? And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about payment schedule. And again, if you are the borrower and another person is the lender, there is no set guidelines. There's no bank involved. The sky is the limit. You can do just about anything you want, so long as your interest rates don't become predatory or usurious. I'll give you the definitions of those when we get there as well. So again, principal, we know, is the outstanding amount of the loan. It is the total debt. It is like the meat without any interest, fees, payments, any of that other crap. So if somebody is agreeing to sell a free and clear house to you, owner financed for $300,000, $300,000 would be the principal. If you added an interest rate to that, that would be a taxable event, and that would be how they would make money. If you could talk them out of their small-minded mindset and get them to realize that if you just increase the size of the loan and name those payments principal as well, it is a non-taxable event. And when the house finally does get sold at the end or refinanced, and they get all of their money back just by waiting and owner financing this particular property to you for a couple of years, you've actually almost doubled the amount of income they will receive, and they don't have to pay taxes on it. It's in their bank account. It's not in an IRA or any of that other crazy shit where it's hard to get out. I hope you understand this concept. We'll talk more about it in later videos. And yes, we are providing you with the documents to do this. Believe it or not, all you need is 2 two-page documents, 4 pieces of paper, a note, and a mortgage. The mortgage is recorded. It can be sold through the note. The note is like a copy of the mortgage that remains off the record with the same terms. You would sell the note, The mortgage would remain recorded, so nobody else could take that position. If it's in first position on title, if you sold the mortgage and it was discharged, the new one had to be recorded. Hypothetically, that seller or that owner could borrow more money before the new mortgage is recorded. This happens all the time with residential mortgages. You'll find you get a note in the mail, your loan was sold. It's the same concept. So that's how you can sell these things, and you can sell them at a discount if you need cash quick, provided everybody's paying on time too. They can become an asset to you or an asset to the seller. Interest rate. All right, sky's the limit, right? Again, my favorite terms for these things are no payments, no interest. You want interest? Tell me what you want. Increase the amount of the loan, still no interest, make it a win-win for the seller. So you can have an interest rate be whatever you want. If they're going to try to charge me some kind of interest and they are not open-minded and they don't seem to be able to process this complex as abstract thought, which will yield them more money in the long run. And honestly, if you want to get it back, sometimes these people become lenders to you again later. You can give them an interest rate. If they ask how much they should charge, tell them to look at what the banks are charging. It's probably about 6%, or what they're getting in the bank that's less than 1%. And I mean, again, whatever you agree on is what it is. So it's between two people. There's no underwriter. There's no banking system. There's two guidelines that you're going to have to follow. Now, in New Jersey, to be predatory or usurious, a loan to an individual has to be over 29.5% annually. That's the cap. Now you know how credit cards get away with charging us such exorbitant interest rates, because if they went higher than that, they would be predatory or usurious, and they would be illegal. You don't want to get involved in one of these, especially as the lender, if you want to finance a property to somebody, because it is on public record and that doesn't go away. So remember, less than that. If somebody was going to make a loan to an LLC, the predatory or usurious interest rate is 49.5%. Ask me how I know that. Whoops. Again, you can make the interest rate whatever it is you want, but if you're not able to convince your seller why you would actually increase the principal, charge no interest, and then they would get more tax-free money, well, then maybe you need to work on being persuasive and influential instead. Nevertheless, interest rate, agree on it, two people, write it down. Term. Let's talk a little bit about terms. The term is the length of the loan. We got a little guy in prison over here. We know that mortgage means, that's what owner financing or seller financing is, or if you've been called a seller carryback mortgage. It is a mortgage that's granted to you from an individual. We already know that mortgage comes from the French word mort, which means like to die. Mortgage, the translation is actually agreement to death. Just like marriage, at the time of making this video, I am currently married. I don't think I need too many other agreements till death in my life. Okay? It doesn't have to be a 30-year mortgage. It doesn't have to be a 2-year mortgage. It is whatever you agree on. So I usually ask the seller, at what point in time would you like all your money back? If they don't want it back, you can make it a 30-year mortgage, and you have to tell them to start thinking about who you are going to leave the benefit or the payments of this mortgage to when they pass on. If they're older, you can concoct whatever term you want. It can be as little as 1 month. It can be as much as 30, 40, 100 years, and you figure it out. Your goal with the seller is to give them what they want. You can't give them what they want if you don't ask and they don't tell you. Communication is huge in this business. Now we're going to talk a little bit about payment schedule, and this is, again, whatever you come up with. Now, typically, I have 2 terms for my mortgages. Number 1, my first offer is always going to be no payments, no interest. That opens the dialogue. Hey, if I bought your house for what you're asking or more, and you financed it to me with no payments and no interest, and I even agreed to overpay, but I showed you how you could keep double the money you would have gotten if you sold it to me cash right now, just for waiting a little bit longer. Would you do it? If you get somebody like that and they need a detailed explanation, when you're stuck, call Chuck or call my office. We'd be happy to help them with the explanation. Okay. Payments can be monthly, payments can be annually, or payments can be a balloon. A monthly mortgage is exactly what it sounds like. Typically, what happens is your mortgage payment is due on the 1st. It should be received by the 5th. It's late on the 6th. There's a late payment penalty associated with it after the 15th, which would be the 16th. And once it comes back around to the 1st again, it's 30 days late. And the mortgage company, if they report to people's credit, can report to your credit. Now, private mortgages don't report to your credit. Seller financing, owner financing, none of this stuff reports to your credit. So there's no limit to how many of these you can have. I'm not advocating this, but in the event you even defaulted on one of these, that still wouldn't report to your credit. So if you're ever in a position like me where you got 40, 50, 100 houses, shit's really tight, you're going through some bad stuff, the pandemic hits, in the event you're going to default on anything, you would default on the ones that don't report to your credit first, which would be the seller financed mortgages. We already know that we're dealing with a person instead of a bank. It is a lot easier to deal with. It might be understanding. Listen, I got hit with this COVID shit. It's been a rough month. I haven't been able to collect my rents. Would it be okay if I paid you a late payment penalty and doubled down the following month? If they say yes, confirm it in writing with an email or via text message per our conversation. There you go. I would submit the payment with that, and you're good. Annual mortgage payments are a totally different story. I have loans currently with these outstanding as well. When mortgages were invented, it was way back when we were an agrarian society. Now, that would be an agricultural society, and most people had the American dream where they would go and buy a family farm somewhere in the Midwest. They try to raise crops, and mortgages were historically due annually in November after the harvest, because that's when the money or the family received the bulk of their money from operating the farm, and they would pay in November for the next year. So annual terms are not bad. However, typically, again, I do interest only or no interest, no payments, interest only, no payments. It's all the same. Make it benefit you. Find a way to over deliver to the seller. A balloon would be anything that stops the mortgage short, saying everything is due in a period under 30 years. Okay, so if I have a mortgage that has monthly payments or no monthly payments, and it's interest only for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, that point in time where there is a hard stop, that 2-year period, or that 5-year period, or that 10-year period, that is known as a balloon. What does a balloon do? It blows up. It comes due just like your mortgage just did. In the event you don't make these balloon payments, technically your lender could foreclose on your house. However, we know we're dealing with people. Maybe the market has crashed. You can't refinance out, meet the terms, whatever the case may be. You can, number one, go back and negotiate and renegotiate. And number two, you can always just go, look, sorry, it didn't work out, and give the house back to them. The only person who signs a deed anyway is you. And in this situation, you are the seller. All right. We went over owner financing. I taught you how to understand it. I gave you a little bit more on just the basic principles of it. And the first thing we discussed was principal. Principal is the total outstanding debt load. Interest rate. Interest rate is how you make money off of lending money. If you're talking about seller financing, you're transferring equity to debt. And then when you get your money back, it's the principal is a non-taxable event. The interest rate is whatever the two of you calculate. We learned what predatory and usurious are, at least in New Jersey. Individually, that's 29.5%. For a corporation or an LLC, that's 49.5%. We learned what terms were, which is going to be the life of the loan, whether it be 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, 40 years, 100 years. It's whatever you guys can concoct. And as long as you're happy with it and the seller's happy with it, I am happy for you. In order to put these together, you need a mortgage that gets recorded and a note that stays in your possession and the previous owner's possession. And the payment schedule is whatever you can come up with. It can be annually, it can be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be at the end of the fucking loan, it could be whatever you want it to be. The sky is the limit. This stuff is amazing as you learn more about it. I hope you've really enjoyed this. It's your first, last, and best line of defense against any free and clear property. And it's a way to give the seller what they want and more while still creating a positive situation for you and not having to come up with the cash because the cash is already in place. I'll do all the owner financing deals I can because if they don't work out, they don't negatively affect my credit, and I can also always give them back. I hereby give you permission to learn more about this, take what you've learned and run with it, and be absolutely fearless. Go make a mess, make a bunch of money. Let's clean it up and make a bigger mess. I'm Chuck Kohout. This has been a pleasure. I'll see you in the next module. Bye for now.